Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Great Transitions Senior Living Series. Today, we're going to be talking about the truth about, is aging in place the right option for you? We're very excited to be here. We're excited to welcome our online community through Facebook Live. If you on Facebook Live have any questions and would like to type them into the chat, you can do so, and that will be monitored. And we will do our best to answer those questions at the end. Great Transitions was founded in 2013 by Paul and Lynn Henderson. And many of you know Paul and Lynn. They're actually in Stamford, Connecticut this week, teaching other realtors how to better serve seniors. So we're really grateful for that. Great Transitions is a system that was developed to work with seniors and their families as their lifestyles and housing needs change. You know, it could be 12 to 18 months, maybe even longer, before you're ready to make a change, and we're here to guide you through the entire process, whatever that looks like for you. Our objective is to educate people about legal, financial, housing, medical, and other general topics of importance to seniors. So through the course of the year, we're going to cover it all. We do have a brochure that lists our seminar series by 6 months, and we'll be introducing the topics for the next 6 months here very soon. We have a couple of seats up here. Okay. And our educational partners are doing well. If you have a seat next to you, can you just raise your hand?
Thank you.
All right, we'll get everybody settled. Thank you so much. So, one of the purposes of this seminar series is not to sell you anything. We are just here to provide education. I had the privilege of helping my own parents downsize a couple of years ago, and that sparked in me a passion to be a resource to the senior community. So I'm really excited to be here today. My name is Beth Lagulo, and welcome. We're glad you're here. We want you to keep in mind as we go through our seminar series, a challenge to ask yourself, and most of you are here because you're planners. And that's really important. So you should give yourself a pat on the back, because if you don't make a plan, that is a plan. Having no plan is actually a plan. And so keep in mind who's going to be tasked with making the decisions for you when you're no longer able to do so, and will you agree with the decisions that they make? So keep that in the back of your mind as we get going, and we're going to start talking about aging in place. According to a survey done by AARP, 77% of people age 50 and over want to remain in their homes as they age. Do we have any people in the room that want to remain in your home? Right, absolutely. So there are 5 main areas to consider when deciding where to live later in life: having purpose, human engagement, physical activity, financial health, and community. We're going to be touching on all of these things with our panelists in just a few moments in order to empower you with the knowledge to make the important decisions. So with that, I'd like to introduce our panelists to you. To my far right is Kim Lee, and many of you will recognize Kim because he's one of our educational partners and is usually here each and every seminar. Kim earned his BS in psychology from Duke University and his JD from the College of William and Mary School of Law. Go Tribe! That's awesome. Kim practiced law as a shareholder for the prominent Orlando firm of Lowndes Drastic et al. For many years, and then as chair of the Commercial Litigation Department for Bogan, Munns & Munns. In 2001, Kim joined Rotech Healthcare Incorporated, a national durable medical equipment company. The Rotech board appointed him Chief Legal Officer in 2013. Kim has chaired a nonprofit board and volunteered in many capacities, including key leadership roles in his downtown Orlando church. He's a founding director of Central Florida Lewy Body Incorporated, and as a leader of Flourish in Place, Kim combines many years of legal experience as an attorney and a business acumen as a national healthcare company senior executive with a strong passion for the mission of helping others flourish. And then to my immediate right, I would like to introduce Dr. Amber Steckel. She's got a lot of letters after her name. PT, DPT, CAPS, and owner of Bird's Nest PT and Home Designs. Amber's a native Floridian. Do we have any native Floridians in the room? Proudly raise your hand. Awesome. And a graduate, I'll say this, of University of Florida. I knew we'd get a little response there. She earned her doctorate in physical therapy at Boston University in 2013. She has experience in outpatient hospital, inpatient rehab, skilled nursing, and home health. Most recently, in the inpatient rehab setting, her focus was intensive treatment following elective orthopedic surgery, surgery after a fall with an injury, neurological events including spinal cord injury, stroke, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, as well as amputation and cardiopulmonary conditions. Amber has worked with the 65-plus population for most of her career. In April of 2022, she started her own mobile PT practice called Bird Nest PT and Home Designs, providing mobile outpatient physical therapy and doing home safety assessments. She became a certified aging in place specialist, that's the CAPS after her name, to help people accomplish this goal and live the life they want to live. At Bird Nest PT and Home Designs, Amber takes care of the person and the home, the bird and the nest. So welcome, Kim. Welcome, Amber. We're really glad to have you here today. With that, we're going to jump right into some questions and some explanations. So get your pen and paper ready. Here we go. Kim, let's start with you. What exactly is aging in place?
Well, very simply, aging in place is the ability to live in one's own home and one's own community independently, comfortably, regardless of your age, income, or ability level. So, like the show of hands we saw a minute ago, nearly 90% of seniors who are surveyed want to age in place. And in fact, I named our company after aging in place. We don't want you to just age in place, we want you to flourish in place. So, but part of the program today is to talk through and think through planning for whether aging in place is going to be the right thing for you, part of the time or all the time.
Right. So with that said, as we're learning more and more about this, what are some barriers to aging in place?
I would say the greatest barrier to aging in place is just your attitude about getting help in the home. So there are other barriers, it costs money and isn't frequently, it's often a private pay out-of-pocket situation. We'll get into that a little bit more. But the biggest barrier that we run into, which sometimes frustrates other family members, is simply that we as Americans are really independent people, and the idea of having help, even when it's needed, in the home is not something that's super comfortable for folks. So that's something we sometimes need to overcome. I'd say that's the biggest barrier. If you want to remain at home, there often reaches a time before the end comes where if you want to stay healthy and safe and you really want to stay in your home, you're going to need to accept help, probably on a regular basis.
So I can do it myself is probably not what your mindset should be. Is that what you're saying?
At some point, not.
Okay.
It's a mindset I totally understand.
Okay. And I think we'll probably get into some of this in a little bit, but if I'm single, I live alone, I don't have family right immediately near me, there are people that you can build, a tribe that you can build to help you evaluate whether or not you need help, correct?
Well, there definitely are. I mean, it's so important to not be isolated. I know Amber's going to get into that more, but studies have shown more and more social isolation is really a problem for seniors. So if you aren't able to, build some social network when you're at home, then maybe you shouldn't be planning to stay at home. Maybe you should go into a senior community where that's just more accessible.
Okay, great. We're going to explore that a little bit more in a few minutes. So Amber, what are some red flags that you can indicate for us that might tell us that aging in place is not the right option? Because we want to get all the reasons why we don't, and then let's talk about all the reasons why we do.
So one is just the amount of skilled care that you need. So for example, managing your medications. Now, if you have, it's very dependent on the situation. If you have a family member, someone that can come over once a week and fill your pill box, and then you set reminders to take them, well, that's a pretty easy solution. You can age in place very well. You can flourish in place. But if you're requiring a large amount of skilled care or anticipate in the future requiring more skilled care, that would be one thing. Another is if you have any sort of cognitive impairment or dementia, or your loved one does, then that would be kind of a red flag. That doesn't mean that you can't succeed. I have a client right now, as a matter of fact, who is has very, very advanced dementia, but is aging in place. His wife is his full-time caregiver, and they go to the gym multiple times a week. They get out and about, they go see their family, so he is technically aging in place and doing very well. So it's not a complete hard no, it's very dependent on the support you have. And then the third red flag would be is if you don't like being alone. So people that are alone and don't like being alone end up being very lonely. People who are alone and love being alone and love solitude, they won't really feel lonely. And so research shows it kind of depends on your preference, and that will have a big say on whether or not that might feel good to you to age in place.
Okay. So I think we found this when we discussed finances with Sean and Dana. It depends is an answer that comes up a lot in this genre of seminar as well. Okay, so let's get some clarity around the language because we throw a lot of terms out. What's the difference between home care and home health? Kim, can you take the lead on that?
Yeah, and I'm going to go into a little bit more than that because the terminology in Florida is really pretty confusing. In fact, in preparing for this, Amber prepared a sheet that's going to be on the website, I think, of Great Transitions.
Yeah.
But let me try to break it, so you don't have to take this all down if you don't want to, but let me try to break it down for you. This will take a minute.
Okay.
But in Florida, there's an Agency for Healthcare Administration. That's ACA, is the acronym. And they regulate nursing homes in Florida, assisted living facilities, home health agencies, nurse registries, and homemaker companion agencies. Okay? And of home health agencies, there's two really different kinds. So you can't just say home health agency and really know what you're referring to. They regulate home health agencies that provide skilled care Usually they're Medicare certified, and usually Medicare is paying for this skilled care. That's something completely different from what our agency, that's a home care agency, does. So it's confusing because they're a home health agency, skilled, and we're a home health agency, non-medical. So the Medicare kind of home health agency is paid for by Medicare. They have registered nurses, licensed practical nurses, speech therapists, occupational therapists, physical therapists. They do have some certified nursing assistants, CNAs. But normally they're coming in on an episode basis for 60 days. For example, if you've had a hospitalization and for 3 days and you go back home, then you get this.
And would they come into the home for a short, specific visit?
Yes, so if a classic example, say you fell, broke your hip, you go back to the home, there's physical therapy, maybe occupational therapy, they're gonna pop in and help you with your physical therapy exercises once or twice a week. There might be somebody, you might need some help with your medications following that, and a nurse will pop in, but they're not gonna provide what a home care agency, home health agency provides, which is on a regular basis, a home health aide or a certified nursing assistant to help you with activities of daily living, personal care, and we'll go into what that is later, but and other things such as help with cooking, cleaning, transportation, all those kinds of needs are a home care agency. It's usually out of pocket, but not always. And it's generally a regular schedule that's set up. So I'm still doing the types of agencies. Home health agency, Medicare, home health agency, that's a home care agency, also called a private duty agency. That's home health aides and nursing assistants on a regular basis. Then there's a nurse registry that's similar to a home health agency, but they are not allowed to employ people. They have independent contractors. So they have home health aides and nursing assistants, but they're not allowed to manage, supervise, or train them. They'll find people that they'll send to you, and you're responsible for them rather than employing them.
Is that like a specialized employment agency?
Kind of like a specialized employment agency. And the public doesn't really know the difference. So there's different ones that you hear about. Some are that you might see advertised, some are registries, and some are home health agencies, non-skilled, and you really got to figure out which one is which. And then another type is homemaker companion agencies. That's something that a home care agency can also provide, but there are homemaker companion agencies, and the difference there is companions and homemakers are not allowed to provide any kind of hands-on care. They're not trained for that. So hands-on care, I'll say it's basically anything that involves touching you, which is often needed, right? Help with getting in and out of a shower or a bath or bathing, changing somebody who's incontinent, helping them to get to the toilet, helping them with transfers in and out of a bed or a chair, helping somebody ambulate, helping sometimes with eating. Those are activities of daily living, and a homemaker companion agency is not allowed to do that because the people don't have the training and the regulations don't provide the oversight. So that was a whole lot to unpack, but it is complicated with terminology.
Yeah, well, it's good to know that we've got a resource that can help lay that out. Do you have anything to add to those?
Yeah, from a physical therapy standpoint, it can also be confusing, especially now that more therapists like myself are going out and creating mobile practices. With COVID, a lot of people were afraid to go into clinics, and so mobile therapy really took off, not only PT, but OT and speech as well. And so for home health PT, that can, first of all, within home health, when I've done home health and I show up to the house, a lot of people will call me a nurse. because they don't really know, we kind of all look the same. So I do think it's very important to know, is it the nurse or the PT that's seeing you, or the occupational therapist, speech therapist. And then separate of that is knowing like a mobile therapist is oftentimes called in-home therapy, but home health therapy is also often called in-home therapy. So in-home, in-home, the take home the thing to know is, are you receiving home health services or outpatient services? So home health therapy is someone who really is confined to the home, whether temporary or long-term. Mobile therapy would be for an outpatient. You can get out of the home regularly. You would be able to go to a clinic. You're just opting for convenience or whatever other reason to have someone come to your home.
Great, thank you both. That was super helpful. So we talked a little bit earlier about the importance of having a plan. And the sooner the plan is made, the easier it is when you're down the road and maybe in a situation, because no one wants to be making a plan during an emergency. That's the wrong time. With that being said, what are the top 3 things that we should be looking for, Kim, when we're looking at home health agencies?
So on our website, we have something you could download that is the top 20 things you should ask.
Okay, so
I knew in
maybe
advance
3
she was
of
going to ask me for 3. So let me sort of I picked these as the top 3. First, and we've touched on this, Amber touched on this a lot, are you hiring the right kind of agency for your needs? So do you need skilled care from a physical therapist? One thing that home health aides can't do under our current regulations is administer medicine. That might be insulin injections, or even it involves actually putting the pills into an organizer. We're not allowed to do that. So if you need that done, say a family member is trying to begin to support someone who's got some dementia and they're worried about the medication management, you might need skilled care and might not be able to get the help from just a home care agency. So finding out what type of agency you need. Do you need that skilled care, or do you need help with what I've listed out as the activities of daily living, such as bathing, dressing, grooming, transfers, incontinence care, toileting, ambulating, eating. So those are the basic personal care items. Or do you need to focus more on what is called in the industry instrumental activities of daily living? So the other things that people begin to need help with, maybe you can refine showering yourself, but driving has become an issue. So transportation might be one thing. Oftentimes help with some light housekeeping, preparing meals. There are just many other things besides those basic 7 activities of daily living that people need help with. So picking the right type of agency that can offer those things. Another thing often that people need is what we call respite care. Respite just means giving the family caregiver a break. So maybe there's a couple and the husband needs more help, and the wife is providing that help most of the time, but it's intense. Being a family caregiver can be very intense, and that person really should think about getting regularly scheduled breaks. It may be a situation where she just can't leave her husband at home alone anymore, and that's a situation where you should consider bringing somebody in to provide some of that help and some of that care. That was a long time for the
That was
top
one, yeah.
Okay, I'll go faster than the next two. Sorry, I just dropped all that. I'd say the next one to check is, isn't this an agency that you verify that they're licensed, bonded, insured, and do they have some kind of accreditation or certification? So that's generally pretty easy to find out. An agency such as ours, we're A+ certified, and what they're checking is that our licensing is current, that we have, you know, at least $1 million of liability insurance, that we have workers' compensation insurance, that we provide regular training for our aides. So I think that's something that's important to check out. And then I'd say my number 3 is it an agency that manages and supervises and trains their aides? You want to find that out. Possibly you're willing not to select that, go with a registry, or hire somebody directly, but be aware of the difference.
Gotcha. Super, that's really helpful. A couple of other quick questions for you, Kim, and then we're going to switch over to Amber. And again, we could probably spend a whole seminar on this one topic, but what costs are involved and need to be considered before making the decision to age in place?
Yeah, that's a good topic. And you're asking a lawyer to be brief. So most often, as we mentioned, home care is most often out-of-pocket self-pay. The average, it's not always, and I'll explain that a little bit. The average rate in Orlando now, I would say, is around $30 an hour. It's usually on an hourly basis. I'd say give or take. It's changed a lot just since the pandemic, as you can imagine, not just inflation, but the whole staffing shortage for service industries really hit this industry, meaning that agencies do need to pay a fair amount more to employ quality aides, and so it's $30 or more per hour is what you should expect. Normally it's per hour. Sometimes agencies, sometimes you want less than that. Agencies offer they'll call it a wake-up service or something like that, helping with getting started and dressing and grooming and bathing, which is a shorter period of time, but normally that's offered for more than the regular hourly rate to bring in somebody for a short period of time. Sometimes there's a daily rate if there's live-in care. So other ways to pay for things, there's long-term care insurance. Long-term care insurance is a beautiful thing. They have a whole separate seminar about long-term care insurance. 10 to 15% of Americans have it. My wife and I have it now that we've gotten into this business. It pays for generally, and they're not uniform policies, but they'll pay for care in the home usually, as well as care in an assisted living community or a nursing home. So it pays for both. And there's also payment through the VA for veterans. There's a pension benefit that's wonderful for veterans and surviving spouses. That's a whole other seminar. It's something that we do. I'm actually a VA accredited attorney, and it's involved. But it's a great benefit for veterans who need it. It requires lower, you have to be below a certain asset and income level to get this pension benefit. And then there's also the Orlando VA has a community care network for veterans, not spouses, but veterans, where the VA pays the agency. That's something we also do. So veterans have a source. But those are the primary sources. The additional one is Medicaid. Medicaid and managed Medicaid do pay for care in the home. You have to have pretty low income and assets to qualify for Medicaid, and another seminar again. And it's, there's lines, if you need to know more about these things, Linda stood up at the beginning. She's an expert on qualifying.
Sure, great. You referenced live-in care. What's the difference between 24/7 care and live-in care?
Okay, live-in care, if somebody, or often if it's an agency, 2 different people during the week actually live in your home. That's less expensive because they're going to not be paid for 8 hours a day typically when they're sleeping. So somebody needs to be able to sleep through the night to get live-in care. There needs to be a room where they can stay. And it's usually paid on a daily rate basis. And it's less expensive because you're paying for 16 hours instead of 24 hours each day. 24/7 care, we also provide. It can get very expensive. There are 168 hours in a week, but plenty of people or seniors, they need help potentially in the night, as well as during the day. And people get 24/7 care and pay for the 168 hours a week because that's their preference or their family's preference, that really want to stay in the home. Oftentimes it's a couple and they've elected to do that. But I give people a rule of thumb if you're looking at cost. Care in the home, remember, care in the home is one-on-one. If you go to a community, there's going to be a CNA paying for multiple, a CNA is seeing multiple people, right? She might have 10 or 15 people that she's helping. It's one-on-one, so people often prefer to stay in their home and get that. But I would say when it gets to be more than 8 hours a day, daily, it's going to be less expensive to be in an assisted living community or nursing home than to be paying for care in home.
So
That's just a general, you just do the math.
Right,
And figure out $30 an hour, what's that going to come to for that many hours?
And it depends on your own personal situation as to what's going to work
Your
out
own
best.
personal financial situation, do you have long-term care insurance? How do you want, would your family want to spend the money that you have?
Sure. Awesome. Thank you. That has helped me. I mean, we've already had meetings about this, but I understand it better, so thank you. If you have any questions, of course, we'll be taking those at the end. Amber, let's switch to talk about the actual home itself. So if I've lived in my home for 30 years and plan to stay there another 20, there may be some modifications that need to be made to my home. And to me, that sounds like expensive. So how do I know what my home needs and which modifications are absolutely necessary to allow me to stay there?
That's a great question. The number one thing that you said was that you're planning to stay there for 20 years. So if you're on the fence about staying longer, if this is your forever home for sure, then yes, absolutely, that's a good time to pour money into it. But if you're on the fence, you might want to make a pro and con list, cost analysis, and see if that's the route you want to go. Because if you're going to move in 3 years, you don't necessarily want to pour a bunch of money into that home. Then, once you've decided, yes, I want to stay here, the 3 main things that we look at are what are your current and future abilities, and that includes physically, but also vision, hearing, the whole entire body. Number 2, can this problem be solved with adaptive equipment? And then 3, what areas of the house do you need to access? So you might live in a huge house, but if we can get your bedroom, bathroom, kitchen and the entrance to the home good, then you can stay in that house. You don't need to, yes, if you have the money and the desire, then you can go crazy. There are some really, really, really cool homes that have been designed to be accessible and beautiful, and you can go crazy and do every single room if you want. But the basics are, when you think about what is absolutely necessary, it would be the activities of daily living. So think of everything that you do to get yourself up and out the door in the morning. So go to the bathroom, brush your teeth, shower, eat food, put clothes on. And then number 2 is getting in and out of the house. So that can be a major barrier for some people that have stairs or an unsafe, like a tricky path from the door to the car. So really the most important things are you able to get ready for the day, and can you get in and out of your house? And
if the plan is to stay for a long time, it may be, I'm assuming you prioritize
yes.
some of those areas,
Yes.
and someone like you can help say,
Yeah.
this is what you need to do first.
Yes, and that's exactly right. So the home assessment, whether it's one that I do or a occupational therapist or a contractor or somebody else, will go through the whole room and say, this is everything that I recommend. Now, some are going to be immediate changes that are for either safety, or they're easy to do immediately because you can order a $30 piece of equipment off Amazon. And then some will be like, okay, $12,000 bathroom remodel, that's going to be a little bit, we're going to do that next year.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So you are what we call a CAPS specialist. And I'd never heard of CAPS specialists until I started working with seniors. Tell us what it is and why it's so important that we consult with a CAPS specialist.
So a CAPS specialist is a certified aging in place specialist. It is not the only specialist in this world. There's CLIP, there's ECHM, they all have to do with home modifications. And so the difference can be, the difference really depends on what setting you're working in. With CAPS, it's focused on aging in place. With some of the others, they might be focused more on a traumatic event. So for example, someone who suffered a spinal cord injury and is now wheelchair bound, that's going to be a different set of modifications than someone who's aging in place and needs to think about the natural degeneration with arthritis and vision impairment, cognitive impairment, things like that. So there's a lot of overlap. I do know CAPS specialists that have worked mostly in, traumatic settings, like after spinal cord injury and amputation, things like that, and then vice versa.
Okay. All right, great. So when you hire a CAPS specialist to do a home assessment, what is the difference between using someone that maybe is a general contractor CAPS specialist versus a physical therapist CAPS specialist? Because anybody can get the certification,
Yes.
right?
Yes, and that is perfect, because all of these certifications are open to the public. The people that tend to want to get this education are physical therapists, occupational therapists, realtors, contractors, interior designers, anyone in the home industry, and then therapy. The difference can be very, very great. So I recommend always a team approach. I have known some builders that have CAPS employees there, and what that shows me is that they're interested in working with therapists, they're interested in collaborating. Some of the installers or remodelers that I've worked with that aren't CAPS certified, they may or may not be open to collaborating. And right now, especially with the industry, a lot of them are backed up. And so in order for me to come in and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing with this person, it takes extra time, which they may or may not want to spend. So I think it's about interviewing multiple different remodelers, installers, and seeing who is really invested in setting me up for success. If they're just trying to come over one time and install the same day and be in and out, that might not give you the best setup. And so I always recommend a team approach. I don't think one is better than the other because the builder has so much experience and knowledge that I don't have. And I have knowledge about the human body and the aging process that they don't have. And so the best is when both people are willing to learn from each other. And then also like advocating for yourself. And I had one woman who was kind of put on the spot to make a decision quickly. And it's like, I'm the one spending money for a service. I want to make sure I consult with everyone and get the best thing for me.
So you shouldn't be made to feel rushed.
No.
Because this could be a major expense, like you said.
Yeah.
A bathroom modification could run you $10,000, $15,000, $50,000 depending on, your house and the size and all that stuff, so.
And I will say, this is a growing area. A lot of people just don't know that people like me exist. I have she's an occupational therapist colleague, and she and her husband just remodeled their whole house, a whole wing of their house to age in place. She herself is an occupational therapist and told me, Amber, I wish I knew that someone like you was doing home assessments like this before we started, because they did interview several different remodelers, but then, again, it's just that one perspective, and the best perspective is to have 4 different people, including realtors and maybe financial people that they can talk about, the opportunity cost of selling your house and whatnot, to see big picture. It's not just,
is an elevator the right thing?
Yeah.
Is it better to move the master downstairs?
Right,
Or
yeah.
just different things like that, yeah. I think that's great. I love a collaborative approach.
yeah.
I mean, that's why we do our seminars, right? So, thank you. That's super helpful. So Kim, I want to toss it back to you. Our last seminar, last month, we talked about scams and frauds, right? And the things that we need to be aware of. Safety and security, when you're having somebody in your home, physically in your home, is super, super important. What should we be looking for in that realm?
So from your question sounds a little bit like we're implying we're going to hire somebody ourselves directly, which a lot of people do. You're going to save money doing that. The thing that you should, the things that you should think about doing are, number one, can you run a criminal background screen on this person? That's important.
But they seem so nice. How can I do that, right?
Most people are nice. I'm a very trusting person too, but you need to trust but verify, right? And there are ways to do background checks. And if you hire somebody, for example, through care.com, some of these websites have a screening function, but that's important. Let's make sure this person doesn't have some kind of criminal history. Number 2, I would do a drug test on them. If they're going to be driving for you, you want to check their motor vehicle record and their driving history. Do you have adequate liability insurance, or do they have really adequate liability insurance? Some will say they do have some kind of liability insurance, but you should check that. And do you have workers' comp insurance? If the aide is helping somebody in the shower and both fall, worked.
Even though I'm not a company, I would still get involved with workers' comp.
You can buy a workers' comp policy,
Wow.
potentially to cover that scenario. And I would say insurance is important. You also need to consider, are they a true independent contractor or not? If you're really employing them, then you should be withholding taxes. So there's a tax advisor. So there's really a lot that you should be doing that many people who hire somebody directly are not doing, and they're taking some risks by doing that. If you have an agency, reputable agencies are checking really all, or at least most of those things. In Florida, ACA requires what's called a level 2 background screen, and this is actually something that all agencies that are licensed by ACA are required to do. And so somebody who wants to work for an agency has to go in and get fingerprinted, their photographs taken, all their background is run through the FBI database and the FDLE, Florida Department of Law Enforcement database. And that has to be kept updated periodically. So through an agency, that is being done.
Wow, that's a lot. I read a book recently and the title was Who, Not How. And I think finding the right who, so you don't have to do all the how, is really important in whatever you're talking about, whether it's financial or legal or home health care or whatever. I know they're working on the AC equipment, trying to get us set. Okay, all right. Okay, all right. Thank you. If y'all scoot next to each other a little closer, we won't hold it against you. Not a problem. Okay, so earlier on, last question for Amber for now. We talked about aging in place and isolation and loneliness. And I think COVID taught us a lot of lessons about that, right? But how do you see it as a doctor of physical therapy and a CAP specialist?
Yeah. So, in my experience, so this is, I'll get to a couple things that are more like textbook answers, but the thing that I've seen time and time again, I saw this a lot with home health, is something Kim touched on earlier. People don't want to ask for help. So, example, I worked with this lovely woman. She lived in a single family home and she was doing pretty darn good by herself living at home. Her granddaughter would come over regularly, her son would come over regularly, but she didn't have really a lot of endurance. And we were trying to think of activities she could do, and she's like, well, I don't think I can handle church and Bible study at the same time, but I think I could do one. So I'd really love to go to Bible study. I said, great, do you have someone that could drive you there? Because she couldn't drive at that time. And she said, oh yeah, I have a couple friends too. I said, would they mind driving you? She said, oh, absolutely not, they'd be over in a heartbeat. But she never reached out or asked. And there's a common, I think it's human nature, but then a lot of it is our culture too, of I don't want to bother this person. So number one is kind of just, it's just getting real with yourself. Is there any pride issue of, oh, I don't want this person to see me this way? But I encourage all my clients, if you're vulnerable as someone else, it encourages them to feel safe being vulnerable with you too. So not seeing it as a sign of weakness, but just, this is life right now and I need extra help. And then the second thing is get specific about what you need help with. So many people want to help, but when you say, oh yeah, just come by any time, or oh yeah, maybe sometime we can do that thing, and then maybe it never happens, is, hey friend, can you come over and drive me to Bible study Wednesday nights? And then that person can commit to that one thing. They know exactly what you need help with. I have another person who's completely overwhelmed, doesn't even know where to start, and doesn't have a whole lot of family support, but has a little bit, has a couple people nearby. but they really don't help out because they don't know what to do. Hey, can you cook one meal a week for us and bring it over and we can freeze it? That way I know I'm covered for one dinner. It's like, write out a list, what do you need help with that other people could do? You know, you might have a list of 50 things that you need help with, but 20 of them somebody else could do. Then those are, you know, so getting specific. Other ideas are scheduled activities where it's like a weekly class at the senior center that I always go to on Mondays. That's gonna always get you out of the house. And then another thing would be like finding a balance between the convenience of getting your groceries delivered versus, okay, if I go out to the grocery store, I have to bump shoulders with some people, I have to talk to the cashier, I have to get myself up and ready for the day. So kind of, yes, you want to utilize those convenience features that save you energy and time, but also how can you get into the community? And then lastly, there's kind of two camps with technology. A lot of people are afraid and overwhelmed, and then a lot of people are trying to keep up with it and are on Facebook and YouTube and know how to do video calls with their family and friends. So I would encourage you just to have an open mind to it. I have some people that, no, I don't even want to touch that smartphone. And it's like, oh, with COVID, that taught everyone so much with, oh, we can connect a lot virtually.
Yeah.
Not quite the same as in person, but if you are afraid or overwhelmed, there are free classes in Maitland. I know once in your place at the, if you do have an Apple phone, the Apple store has, there's help if technology is difficult. So.
Awesome.
And talking to your neighbors. It doesn't have to be like your best friend. If you walk your dog regularly and make a point to, oh, I'm gonna ask my neighbor one question every time I see them. So socialization isn't just friends and family. It can be being intentional about the people that are around you. And that goes along with too, a lot of people think of, am I gonna age in place in my home? Or am I going to go to an assisted living community? And they think of, I was guilty of this too, is I picture a single family home only versus an assisted living community. And it's like there are apartments, condos, townhouses, there's a growing thing where people get roommates. So they have some sort of physical and practical support with meals and driving. And it's just kind of like a.
Yeah, there are options,
yeah.
for sure. And I think you bring a very valid point about asking for help. And if you flip it and say, would I be offended if somebody asked me to take them to a meeting once a week that I already go to? No, I wouldn't be. So don't be afraid to ask someone that you know is out there doing, or a family member that loves to cook. Would I be offended if they asked me to cook a meal once a week? No. So I have to be comfortable being vulnerable, like you said. Yeah. Ken, did you have something to
I
add?
wanted to follow up on some of that. There's a discussion of, what are the needs? Because we didn't exactly talk about the process for going about this. Many home care agencies, ours included, will offer a free assessment or free consultation where you can sit down with someone from the agency and just talk about what could we do and what are the needs and have a full discussion with the family. What can somebody who's a neighbor do? And what is being left out to sort of, and what's ultimately developed, if you go forward, is a plan of care. Our agency has an RN that does the plan of care. Not all agencies do that, but a fair amount do. So there's a written care plan that is worked out, you started off talking about the need for a plan. So this is getting down to brass tacks. If you're going to have home care, there is a plan of care that's developed and can be modified as you go along, and you create certain what are the tasks that are going to be accomplished each day by the aides, and records are kept of that, and there are ways to keep if there's family involved, to keep the family apprised of what's going on, you know, what the records are day to day. I mean, our agency even has something called a family room. That's a secure portal that family members log into, like you do on so many things these days with your email, and create a password. And then if the client authorizes it, then you can see what tasks were done this day, what's the billing about, what's the care plan currently, does it need to be modified?
And I think if you keep it in mind that you have an opportunity to put together your very own board of directors that are going to advise you on how to make the best decisions for you, whether it's financial people, legal people, home health, medical, all of those things, that's your board of directors. And that's how you begin to create that plan. Let's get ready, partners. I don't know who has the microphones, but I'm sure we've got a couple of questions, and we've got time to take a few. If you have a question, raise your hand, and one of the partners will come to you with the microphone. They're going to hold the microphone to make sure we get it. There's one in the back row.
A few years ago, I went to a balance class at the Center for Independent Living across from Winter Park Village, and they offered to come to your house and put the safety bars in your shower or bathroom wherever you needed them for free. And I haven't done that yet, but I thought that was, you know, really one of the really important places where you need help like that, because you think, oh, I'm okay, but one slip and you're down. You've got a shower door, that's not a good thing. So I just thought, I think they still do it. I called up again last year to ask about it, and never followed through. You know, I'm gonna wait until something happens, and then I'll come.
Okay, so she was talking about maybe adding grab bars in the shower or the bathroom area. Can't we just go to Home Depot and get those press-on?
If you get those, I will come over and tell you, get rid of those immediately. I'm so glad you brought that up. The Center for Independent Living is awesome. I'm in the transition of taking over that balance course. I just ran a session in January. Yeah, it was awesome. And I know the people there, they're awesome. So I just checked in with them too to see if they'd offer any grants for aging in place, and they don't. Right now, funding is really difficult. It's mostly private pay if you're gonna remodel your home. But what the Center for Independent Living does offer is grab bars, ramps, and door widening. So you might go on a wait list. It's usually about 1 to 3 months. But they will install, I think it could be up to however many grab bars you actually need. But that is a really good resource right here in Winter Park.
So if you're thinking about it, it might be a good idea to just get on the waiting list, and because it could take a while. Yeah, we're seeing that with a lot of the trades. I think we had a question up front here.
All right, thank you. This is for Amber also. If you're healthy, and at least currently, and I'm thinking of remodeling, we just talked about a couple things for the bathroom, the grab bars, door widening, etc. Say you're going to remodel other parts of the house, the bedroom, the kitchen. What would be recommended to age in place in those areas?
That's a great question. So one of the biggest things is the flooring. Making sure that any tile you have, there's a certain friction coefficient is what it's called, where the top surface is rated, and they test it at like the, really zoomed in level where, is it slip resistant? And Also making sure any transition areas, trying to make those like a 1/4 inch if that. Making sure that the transition areas are very smooth. Another thing, one of the things is universal design is this principle that we're moving away from language like accessibility because there's just like a medical hospital image where it's like, I don't want my home to look like a hospital. So one example is the rocker light switches throughout the whole house. So that means anyone of any size, ability, there's no learning curve to using it. I'm trying to see if we have any right now. I think that one's a switch, but the rocker light switch that you can just punch with the back of your hand if you can't, open your hand. With your elbow, yeah. Things in the kitchen are having the D handles or the rings that you can just easily pull. Anything that doesn't have a grasp, so like lever doorknobs, lever handles, so the faucet you can bump up with your forearm or your hand rather than having to grip and twist. And then lighting is a huge thing. Pretty much the more light the better, but then also if you do have a step down anywhere in the house, making sure that there's color contrast throughout the house at dangerous spots. And then again, technology, there's like a lot of things that can be automated, so you can have automated lights when you walk in, or what was the other one? I was just you can automate things.
Smart switches.
Yeah, smart switches. Oh, door locks. I have a guy that has a Ring door lock. Actually, it's a different brand for the lock itself, but it's somehow connected so he can let people in and out of his home through his cell phone. And that, technology is growing faster and faster every day. So in 10 years, who knows what's going to be available.
Right, right. I think it's really important you talk about the different floorings. A lot of times as a realtor, I'll go in a house that someone's lived in for a number of years, and maybe they only changed the flooring in 1 or 2 rooms because they had a leak in that room and they didn't want to.
Yeah.
And so there are those lippy transitions, or maybe they saved some money and tiled over some tile and had to have a transition, and that's something to think about as you're looking. When my parents moved into their house, we put solid, smooth all the way through, for that reason.
And throw rugs. No throw rugs. That is
Get rid of the rugs.
just right by the shower for when you're using it. And then when you're not using it, I would just recommend dry everything, hang it up, and just have a very clear, throw rugs. Everyone wants throw rugs, especially at the entrance to the home and in the kitchen and stuff like that. But if you can break it, move away from that. That can be a tricky.
So often people come to us, families, after there have been multiple falls, or a fall that was bad enough where they went to the hospital and then they went to rehab and now they're coming home. I'm preaching to the choir because you all are here to learn about these things, but really, you know yourself probably if balance is not as easy or you've had some minor slips or so forth, and really look into this kind of thing now, because it is something that, too often you've heard this, but the falls are what begins a steep decline in people's health, right? And it's so frequent with seniors. So
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So one more question, real quick.
So that made me just think my mother fell a while back, and the first person they called was my brother, who was a half an hour away, and he said call 911. So with that in mind, are we able to register with any police or fire agencies, letting people know that the people who live at that address may need that kind of help, to be on alert for them?
City of Winter Park has a check-in system through the police department, so I think it's gonna be through each municipality. So I would check with the municipality that you live in. That's the first thought I have about that. The city of Winter Park, they'll call every day and check on someone if they know if that person is on a list. Do you have other?
Well, I would just say, I know police do wellness checks, and that's a regular thing. But if there is that situation where somebody's by themselves and you're having to call 911, even if the brother was
Half an hour.
10 minutes away, it might be too late. So if that kind of thing is happening, maybe a community, I want people to age in place in their homes, but if that's happening, consider a senior community, right? Because then there's always somebody right there.
Right.
Or if there is a home health aide, they can only help with that when they're there. So people forget about that and they say they want, 4 hours 3 times a week.
So Kim and Amber are going to be up here, and they will take your questions after. I don't want to keep people too long in the seats. I have a couple of questions for you. The one thing I would like for you to walk away with is, what did you learn today, and what are you going to do with the information that you took in and jotted down in all the notes? And the second thing is, did we try to sell you anything? Okay, good. Well, you're our connection to the world, and we appreciate those of you that brought a friend with you today. Thank you very much. Our next seminar is in May on the 17th of May, and we're going to be talking about downsizing and decluttering, but we're not going to talk about the downsizing and decluttering that, like, I'm a realtor, so I can help you with certain types of downsizing and decluttering, but there are 2 areas where we cannot help you. Anybody know what those are? Well, we could potentially. Your photos and your documents, because those are very personal. And so we're going to have 2 experts that are going to speak to ways to help us catalog, gather, downsize, declutter all those photographs, and also your personal documents. So you'll want to be here. If you want to register before you leave today, you can do so at the bottom of your survey and give that to either Nicole or to Susan at the desk, and we'll get you on the list for next one, or you can go to our website or give us a call. Yes, I will talk about that. We have a handout up here that Amber prepared, and it's great information, so we encourage you to stop up and get a copy of that. I think we have about 40 copies, so if you're a couple, maybe take one, and that way we can make sure that everybody has one. And we always like to close our seminars with a quote, and today we've got a little lesson from George Washington Carver. He says, "How far you go in life depends on being tender with the young, compassionate with the aged, sympathetic with the striving, tolerant of the weak and the strong, because someday in life you will have been all of these things." Have a great week, rest of the week, and we will see you all next month.